Hey everybody, welcome back to the wood shop.
Today we're going to be making one of our favorite woodworking projects.
That's right, in today's video we're going to be making a cutting board.
Now here we have some wood that we picked up at Baghdad Lumber in Shelbyville, Kentucky. We've got some cherry, some hard maple, and some walnut. They have a great selection. If you want to take a look back at our trip to Baghdad Lumber, just click here.
Now the reason cutting boards are one of our favorite projects is because the possibilities are pretty much endless. You've got face grain, edge grain, end grain, all different types of hardwoods you can use. And in today's video, we're going to be showing you how to make an edge grain cutting board. Now this one's pretty basic. You got cherry, hard maple with a walnut accent strip.
We're going to start by cutting some blocks off these pieces of wood, and then we will get started with the planer. All right, so like I said, the first thing we're going to do is cut the lengths off each of these pieces of wood. We're going to cut them at 19 inches. Our goal is to have an 18-inch cutting board, but we do need to have a buffer to be able to square up the edges. So let's go ahead and get these marked out. And we won't actually use every piece that we cut, but this is just going to give us enough to work with, and then we'll have some left over for another cutting board.
Now this cherry and maple is 8/4 lumber, so always make sure you have your circular saw set deep enough to saw all the way through it. Okay, now since we're dealing with rough lumber here, we've got quite a bit of cleanup work to do on this. If you can see, this board has a bad cup in the bottom, a bad bow across the top. Now since this is 8/4 lumber, I think it's thick enough that we can run this through the planer, and it will probably cut this bow off of the top without compressing it down and causing any issues. We can probably get a pretty flat surface on top of this without running it through on the planer sled, but with the 4/4 walnut, it'll probably give some under the planer rollers, and it's really bad twisted. We'll probably have to run this through on the planer sled to get a flat surface on it. Okay, we're done with the planing, and you can see we got a good, nice flat surface on this cherry and maple without the planer sled being used at all. It's so thick it really didn't compress any. It worked out just fine. But with the walnut, we lost about 1/4 of an inch thickness on it because it was really twisted. We had to use the planer sled there. And by the way, if you want to make your own planer sled, check out this video here. I'll walk you through the process. And also, I was able to get these boards planed up nice without any snipe on them. And that was because I just tuned up the planer, and if you want to see a video about that, check it out right here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is cut off all the rough edges on these boards. Then we'll start cutting them into 1.5 inch wide strips. That will be the height of our cutting board. Okay, now you can see we've got all the pieces for our cutting board all planed and cut out and ready to put together.
We did take one of our pieces of maple and cut it in half to wrap around this piece of walnut and kind of showcase it as an accent. Altogether, we're using 3 pieces of cherry that we cut, 2 pieces of maple, and the little walnut accent strip.
So I guess now it's time to start our glue up.
Now remember, this is an edge grain cutting board, so this side that you see right here is the edge. We're going to flip it and actually put glue on the face. We bought this little silicone brush yesterday. We've been used to using our finger. We'll see which one we like better.
And if you've noticed with most of our woodworking projects, we use Titebond 2, but with cutting boards, we go with Titebond 3. Okay, now our cutting board is all glued, clamped together. We're going to let it sit overnight.
And we didn't actually wipe off the glue while it's wet. We didn't want to get it down in the grain of the wood. We're just going to let this dry, pop that off with a chisel, run it through the planer, and then it will be time to sand, pop the grain, and oil this down. It's going to be really beautiful.
All right, now our board has had time to dry, and we have it out of the clamps.
The next thing we need to do is scrape all the glue off these joints front and back. Then we're going to run it through the planer for a nice even surface.
Now we've got our cutting board planed on both sides, got a nice smooth even surface. The next step is to even up these edges. We're going to cut this to 18 inches. I'll start by trimming one side off, then we'll measure and cut the other side. Okay, now we're over here at the router table. We're going to cut a 45-degree chamfer all the way around both sides.
All right, this cutting board is a labor of love. It's time to sand it. We're going to do 80, 120, then 220. And after we get it nice and smooth, we'll pop the grain with some water, come back and sand it some more.
Now that our cutting board is sanded real good and smooth, we're at 220 grit here. The next step is to spray a little water on this, and we do what's called popping the grain. That causes the grain fibers to swell and stand up. Then we'll resand them again.
All right, now that our grain is popped, it's real rough. It's kind of a weird process. We're going to go ahead and sand this down again to 220, put some feet on it, and then oil it. We're in the home stretch now.
Okay, the next step before we oil our board, I'm going to go ahead and attach these little rubber feet to the bottom. They come with these little screws, and you can see how small they are. I've already got the drill bit flagged, so it won't go any farther than I need it to for this little screw.
All right, our cutting board has feet. The only thing left to do is to finish it with some mineral oil. We do have a gallon of white mineral oil here by Ultra Pro, not a sponsor. You can get this off Amazon. It's cheaper than buying smaller bottles of mineral oil. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with the underside of the board. That way I can flip it onto its feet and it'll get some air through there.
And now we have our finished product. It's a cutting board made out of maple, cherry, and walnut. It even has little rubber feet on the bottom.
We really love the way this cutting board turned out. And like we said before, cutting boards are a great project. It gives you endless opportunities for creativity. This happens to be an edge grain cutting board, but you can do face grain, end grain. We did a little chamfer along the edges here, but you could do a round over, just whatever your taste is. We want to say thanks to Baghdad Lumber. They're not a sponsor of this video, but they're a great partner to woodworkers everywhere, particularly in central Kentucky and the Midwest. That's where we got the wood for this project. So hi to Lee and all the folks out at Baghdad Lumber.
If you like today's project, make sure to like and subscribe and ring that bell. We're going to be making more cutting boards in the future, so stick around for that. Also, don't forget to visit us on Facebook at Wood Songs by Russell and our website, woodsongsbyrussell.com.
Thanks again for joining us today. Happy woodworking!